Well, just before we came on air, I spoke to Howard Dean, who stood unsuccessfully as a Democratic presidential nominee in 2004. Until last year, he was the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. I asked him what had gone wrong for Obama in Massachusetts.
I think the major thing is that the American people are very angry. They're angry at Washington. They're angry at the Wall Street establishment. And they elected and voted for Barack Obama because they wanted change. And what they got was a very convoluted health care bill with lots of compromising and special interest fights and partisan fights. And they didn't think they got a health care bill. That was part of it. The Wall Street people are getting big bonuses. It doesn't look like the government's taking them on. So what you have is somewhat of a populist revolt here.
What you seem to be suggesting is that the kind of core vote, the core liberal vote, just didn't bother to turn out.
No, well, we did some polling on that overnight. It was very interesting. 18% of the people who voted for Scott Brown were Obama voters. Of those, by 3-2, they wanted a public option in the health care bill, which meant they thought the bill didn't go far enough. We then polled Obama voters who didn't bother to vote. Of them, 6-1 decided they wanted a public option, and they didn't think the bill went far enough. So this is not, contrary to what a lot of American pundits are talking about, this is not a revolt of the right. This is Barack Obama's core base not thinking that we've done what he was asked to do.
But that is quite a radical solution, isn't it? Are you seriously proposing that the way to have defeated a right-wing challenge was to be more left-wing?
Well, that's correct. The left-wing, I think, the Washington pundits are stuck on this left-right stuff. That's gone. People aren't thinking about left and right anymore, except for the dinosaurs like me. People are now thinking about change versus not change, and any kind of real change. Any president who was seen to kick the special interests in the rear end and get them out of the way was going to be popular whether they're on the right or the left.
This feeling of disappointment, disenchantment, things not being followed through, opportunities not being seized, how widespread is it across the country?
It's very, very widespread. I had a couple of Republicans tell me from Indiana, tell me they'd voted for Obama the last time and they weren't going to do it again unless things changed. I do think we have an opportunity for redemption. I think we can salvage a decent health care bill, probably through the reconciliation process, and I think we can go on and regulate Wall Street the way it ought to be regulated. And you're going through these same things in Britain. I've got to believe that the population there doesn't think that the government's taking enough effort to support the public as opposed to the institutions.
Well, of course, we're not in the leadership of a man who swept into power a year ago, took office on this unprecedented tide of opinion. So it was an entirely different kind of situation here. I mean,
Not so entirely different. We both share very high unemployment rates, enormous frustration by ordinary voters in both sides of the Atlantic, both in Britain and the U.S.
Are you personally disappointed? I mean, there's a whole raft of things, from the closure of Guantanamo Bay to the climate change bill, Afghanistan, the economy, all sorts of things. Are you personally disappointed?
I think in general the president's done a very, very good job, and he doesn't get much credit for it. He's done a terrific job on the environment. He's restored America's a good name around the world. I am disappointed in health care. I think we missed a golden opportunity. I don't think the opportunity is over yet, and frankly I think it may be healthy to have lost a seat. The idea that we were going to get everything through with 60 votes, that's a prescription for disaster. We always had 51 votes for much, much more far-reaching reform had it been done through the budget reconciliation process. We can't get that kind of reform now, but I still think we can do a decent amount of reform, and we should do that quickly and get it done, and then turn our attention to what the American people want, which is jobs and some tax reform and things of that sort.
And you're quite happy, are you, with the fact that Guantanamo Bay hasn't been closed, despite the promise that it was going to be closed by now, about the commitment of extra troops to Afghanistan, about the failure to get a climate change bill?
Well, look, I think, first of all, I agree with the president of Afghanistan. There's no good options, and he picked the best of a bunch of bad options, and I support the president. Secondly, the president, I think, has done the best he can with Guantanamo. We've seen that about 10% of the people who've been let out of Guantanamo have gone back to joining the Al-Qaeda jihad. And, we got to be careful here. I think we want to close Guantanamo. The president's doing the best he can there. I thought Copenhagen was a success. I know the Europeans believe it isn't, because the Europeans are the world leaders in trying to deal with the environment.
You don't think, do you, that the president should try to get this through before Scott Brown takes his seat?
No, nobody thinks that, and it's not necessary, and we shouldn't do it.
So what do you think he should do?
I think that he's got a number of choices. One is to get the Senate to pass the House to pass the Senate bill. I think that's unlikely. It's not a very strong bill, and the House has really been run over in most of the things they wanted in any case. Two, to give up and have no bill at all. I think that's a mistake. Three, I'd use the reconciliation process to do some modest reforms, using the existing public health programs, Medicare and Medicaid. Everybody's familiar with those.
But do you think when the audit of history comes to be passed on the Obama presidency, this reverse 1 year in, his low approval ratings and so on, will be seen as a blip? Do you? I mean, he's going to go down in history as a successful president in your judgment?
I think there's a very smart president. I think there's a lesson for everybody. I hope they draw the right one. The lesson is not to move further to the right and compromise more. That's clearly a losing proposition. The message is to speak to your base, to stand up for what you believe in. Look, I didn't agree with anything that George Bush did, but he did know how to talk to the American people, and they supported him even though they didn't agree with the things that he was doing until the end, when we got an enormous economic problem and 2 wars that we couldn't sustain. So I think strong leadership matters a lot. I think the president's capable of strong leadership, and I think you'll see that from now on.
Howard Dean, thank you very much.